Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Marola, the director of the ongoing Burzynski Cancer is Serious Business documentary film series. We spent 2 weeks in November of 2015 covering the first half of the Texas Medical Board versus Burzynski hearings in Austin, Texas. And we just returned from another 2 weeks of filming covering the second and final portion of this trial. We filmed every minute of these proceedings from 4 angles. For this posting, I wanted to give the public some quick highlights from the second half of these proceedings, particularly since the mainstream media has chosen to ignore them.
Okay. Yeah, in large part, I think this whole proceeding has been one of form over substance. I mean, and you saw the best personification of it today when one of the judges asked the lead prosecutor for the board, look, if a treatment was not within the standard of care at the time, but it has come into acceptance and is viewed as the proper treatment today, do you still think that the practitioner should be, in essence, punished for it? And they said yes. I mean, that is a ridiculous concept to know that a rule trumps patient care. I mean, what is more important, properly treating the patient or following some rule that we now know or some standard that proves to be incorrect in hindsight? That's an incredibly misguided and misuse of what ought to be going on here.
All right, I have a question for staff I've been noodling with.
It is one I've been
And I see this as a basis of the question, and it's something you're probably going to want to address. I would assume you will address in your briefs. But is it the board's position that if there is a not experimental but cutting edge treatment such as what we've heard gene targeted therapy treatment, that at the time that they are utilizing that, it's not been accepted, but that it then is subsequently accepted? Is it the board's position that they violated the standard of care by following that?
Yes. The standard of care is subject to what is the standard of care at the time that the patient was treated, what the rationale was that the physician had when creating the treatment decision.
So is it the board's position that they don't encourage innovative therapy?
Absolutely not. And obviously there are probably people above my pay grade that should discuss board policy, but the way that the rules are laid out is you have rules that govern the standard of care. If a treatment is not within the standard of care, then it is subject to Chapter 200, specifically Rule 200.3. And both of those are at play with patients A through G, and 200.3 to a limited extent with patients H through CC.
Well, you're going to have to come in. Okay. Anything else we need to do today? I think we've given you all your homework.
At the end, the judge said, well, you're going to have to convince me. You heard that?
I did.
Yeah. What did you kind of take from that?
Well, I mean, look, I will admit that when I went into this hearing, I thought it was going to be a very unfair proceeding. I thought we didn't stand a chance just based upon the temperature of the room before we started the hearing. And I think we've been given a very fair hearing. I think the judges are paying attention. They're asking the good questions. And I think slowly but surely the judges have been educated as to what's really occurred versus what the board's, accusations of what occurred has. At the end of the day, no double entendre intended, or perhaps intended, I think the judge's question is the best one, and I'm buoyed by that. I'm hopeful that that's where their focus is, because that's where their focus should be. Look, I don't give a rat's ass, frankly, if a technical violation occurred or not. What I care about, and what Dr. Burzynski cares about, is whether patients that need his treatment in the future, and that treatment can only be gotten through his clinic or through his practice, can be had, and that's the end game. That's completely the end game.
I completely agree with you. In your opinion, trying a case like this, I sat here trying to hang on every word and just find what they could have gotten on him, if you will. I mean, do you feel like they have anything? I mean, honestly, all this time, did they catch something that,
If they proved anything of substance, it was missed on me. I mean, it was a very frustrating exercise for me to watch, because not only are they not familiar with the rules of evidence, they're not even curious about them. And they would consistently ask improper questions and proceed, procedurally inappropriately, which frustrates me. But even through that fog, even getting through their missteps as lawyers, I don't think they've proven that today was Wednesday, for God's sakes. I don't think they've proven anything to the satisfaction that would warrant a disciplinary body to sanction Dr. Burzynski, but we'll see.
Dr. Burzynski and Judge Sketty, I think, touched on this, but the complaint alleges that you violated the standard of care, among other things, by prescribing Valtrex to patient F. You recall that?
Yes.
Did you prescribe, or was patient F prescribed Valtrex?
It wasn't prescribed by me.
Was or was
it
not?
was not prescribed by me. He was taking this before coming to the clinic.
So, to the very specific point that the complaint alleges that you or your clinic prescribed Valtrex, and that was a violation of the standard of care, are you telling us that your clinic didn't
No.
prescribe Valtrex?
This was prescribed before coming to the clinic and for certain purpose, which was herpes simplex infection, not treatment of cancer.
It's a brand new day.
So who prescribed the herpes medication to patient F?
As far as I know, the doctor who saw him before coming to the clinic, and then Dr. Weaver refilled the prescription.
How long was patient F under the treatment or the care of the Burzynski clinic?
Approximately 5 weeks.
Is there any indication from any chart note or medical record within the Burzynski clinic that patient F discontinued the treatment because of side effects?
No.
And again, to be Captain Obvious, he's still alive today.
Yes.
Patient F was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Steve Jobs, Patrick Swayze, and even Bill Hicks were not so lucky. Patient F is still alive and cancer-free today, 6 years later.
Patient...
Before we move on,
yes, sir.
going back to November, I've got a note here that Mrs. Patient F testified that she and her husband are upset about being given chemotherapy drugs. Was there any discussion? Well, first of all, I don't think that came up.
Yeah, I didn't cover
Did you
it.
have the initial discussion with this couple?
I met him first time, and this was the only time, on the first visit.
All right. Was there anything in that discussion where they discussed with you not wanting chemotherapy?
No. But again, the form of chemotherapy was discussed was the mildest form of chemotherapy, which was called Zeloda. And that's the same chemotherapy the patient continued a few months later under a different oncologist.
Okay. But that was the only time you had any conversation with them at all. So if they had any conversations with others, were you ever made aware that they had expressed a desire not to have chemotherapy?
Not at this time. This was mentioned that chemotherapy may be used, and this particular agent was mentioned. This was the easiest form of chemotherapy which was available.
Okay.
And what was the name, if I might, Your Honor? What was the name of that medication, Dr.
It was
Burzynski?
Zeloda, and this was the only chemotherapy medication which he received. The rest were targeted medications.
So to be clear, the Burzynski clinic prescribed Zeloda,
Yes.
and as did this patient's subsequent or follow-up physician prescribed Zeloda?
Yes, Dr. Block, oncologist who saw the patient 6 months later, prescribed Zeloda also. And he didn't complain of Dr. Block at all. He was highly complimentary.
Back to the judge's point, you don't have a recollection of any discussion where these patients, the patient or his wife, were complaining about not wanting to use chemotherapy?
No, the problem started when he was supposed to pay for medication from pharmacy, and he decided not to pay and disappeared.
The chemotherapy that he did, that y'all prescribed and the subsequent physician described as Zalata, is that oral or is that intravenous?
This is oral chemotherapy, tablets.
And so would you describe that as mild or aggressive form of chemotherapy?
This is the mildest form of chemotherapy.
And what are the side effects of that?
At this dosage which was prescribed to the patient, he may have some frequent bowel movements that he had, some like 3 bowel movements a day.
Was there a standard of care for pancreatic cancer?
Well, this is deadly cancer. The standard of care is only for palliation, and everybody dies. So that's pretty much
Palliation.
standard of care.
Keep them comfortable.
Nobody survived more than a year, and including this particular patient.
So if the standard of care is keep them comfortable, you just send them home to die?
So what kind of standard of care is this? Everybody dies.
Would you rather, Dr. Burzynski, would you rather go by what the standard of care is at the time, or try to provide a treatment that may work or that does work?
My obligation as a medical doctor is provide a treatment that works, not the treatment where everybody dies.
How strongly do you feel about that, doctor?
Sorry?
How strongly do you feel about that?
That's something which we took oath when we became medical doctors, to use our best knowledge to help patients and save their life.
And for how many years as a physician, Dr. Burzynski, have you tried to help and save lives of people that came to your office, who came to your clinic with diseases that couldn't be cured?
For 50 years.
Well, I mean, I saw your documentary I saw the interview with Dr. Suda about how you question everything from a scientific perspective. That was sort of my experience with this case, is that at first you don't know what to believe, but really what changed my mind was meeting these patients and hearing their stories and hearing their stories of success. So that really convinced me that this is the real deal. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for being on.
You're wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Obviously, my nose and everybody else's aren't.
I suppose it would be rather unorthodox to get a comment from you. Right?
Yes.
Wait a second. Okay.